There are many of us that have days where maybe we falter and we waver and we question our salvation. Well, for God's people, in God's eyes, that is never in question. Those that he has saved, that is an undoable work. And verse 30 of Romans chapter 8 this morning really grounds that in, really brings us that assurance. The Apostle Paul says this: those whom he predestined, he also called. Those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. So Paul is kind of taking us through just this sequence of events in the salvation of the Christian. He starts with our predestination, which we've seen over the last few days is an incredible work of God for him to lay his claim on his children, those that he would call his own, those that would walk by the Spirit and not the flesh. He lays his claim on them before even the foundation of the world. He predestines us. And those who he predestines, he also calls. So if he lays claim on you, he will be faithful to draw you to himself. And those who he calls, he will be faithful to justify. This work of justification is a legal declaration of our righteousness. Not any righteousness that we have done, but the righteousness of God's Son, Jesus Christ, being given to us, being imputed to us. We are made righteous. And finally, he says, those whom he justified, he also glorified. This is the kind of last step in our salvation, our glorification. That is us being made perfect before God for all eternity, with no aspect of sin or brokenness around us. Now, we already know that is a work that we are waiting for. Paul's already shown us in the previous verses in Romans chapter 8 that we, along with all of creation, are groaning. We are waiting for our glorification. That is a day to come in the future. We are waiting in hope for that day. But this is the hope that we wait in. It is a sure and steadfast hope. We've already said that, and we see that again in just the tense that Paul writes here. He says, those whom he justified, he also glorified. He talks about the past tense here. See, Paul has shown us here that in God's eyes, our work of glorification is as good as done. We can take great hope in that today. That our work of salvation, this work that God has done for us, in us, which started long before the creation of the world itself, and will find its completion when we go to be with God, when we are resurrected and we live with him for all eternity. That work, in God's eyes, is as good as done. Take hope in that. Find confidence in your salvation as you read and meditate on this verse today, and allow this to increase your love for God.